So guys, this is my review for Fena Pirate Princess episode 5 that came out earlier today. And with that guys, let's jump right into this review of episode 5. Let's get it. So guys, episode 5 was titled Coordinates. And just like in episode 4 of last week, that was very interesting that I'm still kind of like questioning Sonata and a couple other things. So there was a carrier pigeon here in this episode that went back to Shiton. Shiton was reading this specific letter, the small letter, on the boat while they were traveling to get to their next destination. But here at the beginning of episode 5, we're having a conversation between Sonata and I believe his name is K. K is Sonata's nephew, and they're basically having a conversation. And actually, K is the brother of Shiton. So they're basically having a conversation about Yukimaru and trusting Yukimaru, right? And so they're basically actually, I'm sorry. It's K is the brother of Yukimaru. So they are having a conversation about Yukimaru from way back when they were younger on the boat in the beginning of episode 1. He was there, so you would have to believe that that Sonata was there too. So they're having a conversation about Yukimaru and a witch and him being under in control or under control of this witch. And Kay basically is like saying like, Uncle, do you not trust me? Do you I feel like the reason why you had Yukimaru go with Fena and them instead of me is because you don't trust me. And Sonata basically asks Kay is, do you believe that you're skillful, like skill wise you're better than Yukimaru. But that pretty much was the conversation. But again, like I said, this carrier pigeon from last week, it would seem that somebody is feeding information to Abel and Amali, and I believe it's from Sonata's camp, and it might be tying into Shiton as well. I just feel like somebody's a spy within Sonata's camp and feeding them the information. But that's pretty much what this goes on. But moving forward is when things take a turn in a very interesting way. So the crew here is having a conversation, and that is about the basically the conversation they had with Arya and her grandfather, and they gained a map from them, and basically her grandfather told them that they need to go to Orleans in France because that's where they're headed anyway. They're headed to France, but more specifically, it is where Orleans, basically New Orleans, is, and that's where they're headed to next. But at the same time, they are trying to take up a vote to say basically like, are we really gonna go do this? Is this the right direction? And it was basically like a show of hands, like who agreed with doing this, and mostly everybody basically rose their hand and said that that's where we're headed to next. So with that, they basically do indeed head to France. They do indeed head to Orleans. But with that, that's when we see some familiar faces once they arrive at their destination. And those familiar faces are O'Malley and her crew. They end up following her. Like I stated in last week, and even in this video, like I felt like there's a spy. It could be Shiton or somebody. Somebody's informing O'Malley and crew, like Abel and them, that this is where they're. Every time Finn and them go in a specific direction, they're right behind them. So they're basically up on these rocks. They're looking down. As you can see, one of the characters, she's holding a scope there. So, they're looking down at Finna and crew, just following their every move, because they are here at Orleans, and they're actually going to be going in this underground cave moving forward. But again, here's a familiar crew who they just keep running into and can't escape from their clutches. So once we see them, and then we move into this underground area that Fena and crew are headed to next. Now, once they start traveling in this underground area here, that they end up coming to a crossroad. There was two different paths, and basically as they're traveling, they come across different pathways, right? But they basically are saying like, Fena, you make the decision. Your hunches have been right so far up to this point. We're going to put our faith and trust in you. There were a couple of funny moments, like with Kareen being very scared because there were skulls under here. There was a conversation between Shitan and Yukimaru. They're basically talking about like there's women and children here. Like Yukimaru could tell that these dead skulls were women and children, and Shitan is basically saying like these people ended up getting stuck down here and they either took their lives or something else happened to where they died. But when they get to uh, the first double path, this scene happens where Finn is trying to figure out which way to go, and then she blinks like 3 times. And just like in episode 4 last week, at the very beginning of episode 4, where she was dreaming, and she heard this voice telling her or asking her a specific question. No, there were those flower petals that were flying around her. This happens here specifically while when they're getting ready to make the decision on which path to take. She blinks 3 times. This scene happens, and then it's like she's in a trance and she makes the decision to go in a specific direction, and that direction is to the right side. But like I said, because they're going in a specific direction, they have O'Malley and crew behind them, following their every move to get to the area that they really want to get to. And also, like Shitan and them were basically saying like, once we get to a specific spot, we're going to end up splitting up. That doesn't happen, actually. It just seemed like here when they got to the dual road that was going to be the case, but that doesn't happen at all. But I just definitely wanted to note that they were going to make a decision to split up into 2 teams, but that didn't happen at all here in episode 5. And like I said, Amali and crew are right behind them. They're following them. Literally, they are here at the entrance of this underground area, and they're right behind them. And basically, they're using the young lady there, the blonde there on the right. Her name is Mary. They're using her as their guide. But it's funny because she's actually the young lady that one of the twins basically when they fought in last week's episode, that he basically was saying like, I choose not to fight you because you're too beautiful. But she's basically like their guide, and whatever she's saying like yeah, she's putting her ear to the ground and stuff like that, and saying they went in this direction. So when they got to that dual pathway, she said that they went left, when again Mary told them through this trance to go right. So when Fena told them to go right, they went. When Fena told them to go in the right direction. So Mary says like, yeah, they went left. Amali's like, up, great, we can rely on you. We're gonna go right. So they're literally following them in the right direction. But Mary keeps telling them to go in the wrong direction each time they get to a specific spot, because like I said, there are various paths in this underground area, and Mary keeps telling them to go in the opposite direction, but O'Malley is definitely telling them to go in the right direction, and that is where Finn and them are headed to, which is this huge area down below, which we're going to see next. One thing I do want to note though is just before they hit this door for this combination to unlock and open the door to get into this big huge room, that basically Shitan is the one that brings us up when he's having a conversation with Yukimaru, because Yukimaru he's asking Fena like, Fena, are you okay and stuff like that, but Shitan basically says that it must be something about her past, like she's her memory, because there are certain things that are occurring in her life. It's her memory from her past is popping up and helping direct her in a specific way. Now they did mention this at the beginning of the episode, talking about this witch and being under this trance, and I feel like this is that trance that Fena is under this witch's trance to guide her in the direction that they need to go. This is just something that I believe is actually occurring because Fena is not in control of herself while they're being guided by her to get to this specific room. So this is why I wanted to make a note here about this. Like, Shiton is saying this stuff about Fena in her past, and I just feel like I just really am starting to feel like Shiton has a key role in, you know, Abel and Omali being right behind them and following them, and being, I feel like Shiton is the spy and stuff like that. And you know, because he knows this information about Fena and her past. So it's just something that I find very interesting here in episode 5. And this is the huge room, the underground cave that they needed to get to. And basically Fena is, because she's still being controlled, tells Makaba to light one of the spots on the side, and it lights these blue fires around to light up the entire room. And that middle portion is where they have to go down these steps to get to. So this is what happens once they get to the middle of the cave to light the fire, and these blue flames pop up. But they have to get to the middle of the cave right here, which we're going to get to next. And once they get to the middle of the area, they basically Fena grabs the stone that she got from Sonata. And as you see in the middle of the area, there are other stones there. And basically that middle spot there, that's where Fena's gonna place the stone. So once she does that, it, you know, the middle of the thing, it starts to light up a little bit, but nothing seems to be happening. But actually something does indeed happen. And so what occurs is that everybody's like, they're like, well, what's really going on? They don't really know. Makaba notices there's this little pocket section on the side, and what they see is this right here. What it shows, that little pocket is like a revealing section, because Arya's grandfather says, like, we would scratch things in these stones that the naked eye can't see, and once Fena puts the stone in the middle, and it literally reveals these Roman numerals, which per the title of of episode 5, which is titled Coordinates, this is what it more than likely means. It means these are coordinates to Edina. This is what I'm going to guess and say that it is, but this is what it shows. But while this is occurring, while they're looking at this, Fena goes off on her own, and the rest of the crew doesn't notice this, but she goes to a specific area, and it is this place right here. Now I'm going to guess and say that this is where the trance wears off, because once she gets to this room, it's like she blinks, I believe, once or twice. But this is actually the grave site of Joan of Arc. As you can see there, the La Pucelle. It says, here lies Joan of Arc. And what ends up happening, Fena is staring at this, and she starts crying a little bit. And she's actually asking the gravesite, like, you called me here. Like, why did you call me? Why did you bring me here specifically? But again, this is the site of Joan of Arc. But with that, that's when Omali and crew show up. They grab Fena, and then this is what happens next in the next scene. And this is what happens. They end up holding Fena hostage because Yukimaro ends up noticing that Fena is missing, and they're getting ready to try to search for her. But like I said, Omali and them, they show up. They pop up with her, holding her as a hostage. And basically during this conversation, that they basically tell them that, lower their weapons, like basically drop them where they're at. Shiton, he was kind of hesitant. He was like the only one, but they pretty much end up forcing him to drop his bow and arrow. But they're basically having a conversation because Omali notices that Karen, she ended up writing down those Roman numerals on a piece of paper or whatever, or a cloth even. That's what it looked like. Maybe it was a cloth. And she basically demands Karen to give her that cloth. But again, there's a lot of tension, and the group is like, Yukimaro and them are basically like not really willing to do it. But Karine is like, look, if we don't do this, they're gonna hurt Fena, and even the the woman who's holding her, with the weapon up against her neck. She sort of cuts Fena's neck a little bit, makes her bleed. So it was just one of those things, like, you really have to be careful, because otherwise they could really seriously hurt Fena. But one of the things that Yukimaro does mention, and she says to them, she says, you need to give me that piece of paper, with that information on it, because we need it to guide us to El Dorado. That's when the couple of Fena's people were basically like, El Dorado, what do you mean? She mentions this, so this basically means that where they're headed to is Edina, but that's like, I want to say, like a big huge city, but they're actually heading to El Dorado. That's their main goal, Amali's main goal, her and her crew. But because they're saying this, they're letting Fena's crew know that this is even more key information moving forward with the anime. But also with that, because they're holding her hostage, a couple of I believe it's the young lady to her left, Amali basically says, like, should we not kill them and stuff like that. But Amali is like, no, we're not. They actually set up some dynamite off the side. I want to say it's behind the entrance, that she basically says, like, if we blow it up, we're gonna block their entrance, and they're just gonna starve to death down there. They're gonna die. And I forgot to also mention that Hisa is back at the boat this time, and not Yukimaro. So it was just one of those cases that Yukimaro wasn't one of the ones that stayed behind this time to tend to the boat. Hisa is the only one back there. So once they finally get the paper with the coordinates on it, they end up leaving, and basically also Karine went up to hand her the information, but she gets kneed to the face, and she rolls down the steps face first into a little bit of the water down below. So she's a little bit injured too. So, but needless to say, in this scene, they get the paper. They take Fena with them because they need her. That's what they were saying. They need her and that paper, the coordinates, and they set the dynamite ablaze to blow up. And that's basically what happens. And he was back on the boat. He was asleep, but then he heard the explosion, and he notices that something is wrong. So, and that's pretty much the end of episode 5. And that it was a fairly decent episode, guys. I did enjoy a little bit of it, a little bit comedic. But pretty much this was the main focus of episode 5, was just them getting down here and getting those coordinates. But I'm still curious about Fena being in that trance, about this witch, definitely about Shitan. I'm really curious about what he has in stake with all of this. Plus Sonata's crew, rest of his crew, his Yukimaru's brother and stuff. Like, there's just some stuff that I'm really curious about when it's pertaining to these key players and different things that are occurring now that we're here in these moments in episode 5. So with that, guys, let me know your thoughts. What did y'all think of episode 5 when you first sat down and watched it for the first time? Leave some comments in the comment section below if you feel up to it, and I will talk to you all next time with more Fena Pirate Princess. Peace, guys.